If you're looking for a content sharing the atmosphere of KubeCon plus a couple of interviews, then this episode is for you. Welcome back to the Is It Observable YouTube channel. Today's episode is a bit special because it's going to be related to KubeCon. During every KubeCon, you know, I try to record interviews, share the atmosphere of the conference, and this year I have recorded tons of interviews like usual. So I've prepared 3 episodes organized on themes. So I will have different interviews, and those will be delivered on episodes related to specific themes. So today we're kicking off with the first episode covering the Observability Day and the excitement of the day 1 of KubeCon. We'll dive into the latest trends shaping on the observability markets with insights from Rachel Stevens from RedMonk. And that's not all. If you ever wonder why bad telemetry data can ruin your observability strategy, you've got, of course, Juraci and Dan Blanco sharing their thoughts on this challenge and introducing tools like Instrumentation Score and Weaver that can help us to improve the data quality of our instrumentations. We also met Yuri from Ollygarden, who will explain how Ollygarden is changing the game for observability. And finally, I had the chance to see Hanson Ho that will take us into the fascinating journey of the life of a mobile span. So, if you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And stay tuned because soon you will have the episode 2 and episode 3 that will be released with more insights with different topics covered. 3:30, time to go to the US. 1 week of road trip and KubeCon Atlanta. All right, let's go. Gosh.
Yeah. Sorry.
Please drive properly. Please drive properly.
Everybody put on seatbelts because it's a robot. Okay. We're going. Yeah.
On day 0, it's Observability Day. Let's go.
Research Director at RedMonk, and at RedMonk we follow technology adoption trends, particularly from the view of the developer and the practitioner. So some of the trends that RedMonk are seeing in the observability market is, one, everything is observability now. You may have noticed that we don't call anything monitoring anymore. It is the whole market has shifted to this wider view of more context and data that has come together in a way where people can better understand the signals and noise. Part of that is that we are seeing kind of the commoditization of data collection as part of the thing. So if you kind of think of the evolution of the industry, you kind of think back to the APM days where people had very proprietary agents, all the data lived in kind of a siloed stack, and the observability, or at the time it was monitoring data, was all kind of in a place and it lived there, and only the magical select few could actually access it and use it. So you had to know the right query language, you had to be able to do all of the things. We started to see that ecosystem open up early. So we saw like the Elk stack was one example that we had things come through with like Prometheus and Grafana. And really what we saw, the big shift in how this ecosystem is coming together was when Open Census and Open Tracing came together to form the OTel, the Open Telemetry project. And the ecosystem has really rallied around that project as a standard and as a way for people to have their data ingested in common formats so that your data doesn't necessarily have to be instrumented one particular way for one particular vendor, and instead your data now has a way to just go into whatever system you need it to go into. If I'm thinking about the role of the open source community in conjunction with the vendor community, all of them have roles to play, and we find people who are coming up with solutions all across that spectrum of fully open to fully vendorized, and then a whole bunch of flavors in between. So when we're looking at people who have decided that they want to do it fully themselves, sometimes it is they have control and concerns on that front. Sometimes it's because they have cost concerns. Sometimes they're just bootstrapping something. Usually when we're seeing large scale organizations with production-based observability, they have brought a vendor in, sometimes many vendors in actually, so it just depends. But what we are seeing is that people want at least that promise of portability of their data and being able to use the value add of the vendor and the vendor system on top of their data that they're ingesting, sometimes using proprietary agents, but oftentimes more now using OTel instrumentation. Right now we're seeing the volume of data that people are trying to collect and sift through has always been, I think that's a perennial thing when people are talking about logs. It's like, how am I supposed to actually find the needle in the haystack and a whole bunch of logs? I think we're seeing that to an even greater degree right now, not just in logs, but in everything. We have so much data that we can possibly be observing, especially as you start to look into worlds where we are bringing in new technologies like LLMs. It's like, how are we supposed to be understanding how these technologies are performing on a whole bunch of different axes in terms of performance and latency, all of these things. So one of the things that is a challenge for people is trying to figure out, what data am I supposed to keep? What is the data that has value? How do I have kind of this cost of basically a high density amount of data compared to the cost that I'm paying for it? And that is what people are trying to figure out in terms of what do I store, where does this go? And so one of the things that we're seeing people play with is, can some of this data live in like a generic data lake and then we rehydrate it as needed? Do we need to sample? Do we need to figure out how to ingest only certain things? Are some things going to be changed from logs to metrics? Like, all of these things are in play all of the time, and people are just trying to perpetually hone what it is that they are doing so that their data is not absolutely exploding and their costs are not exploding. So I think the quality of the data is absolutely in question for a lot of people. It's like, do I need to instrument better, or do I even have the capability to instrument better, or can the tool help me do that? Or even more into the future, it's like, can LLMs help me understand what my data is without kind of that heavy lift on the front end? All of that is fair, but it's also really like, LLMs are an expensive way to solve problems most of the time. And so if you can get to a point where you have found an observability vendor that can help you sift through the data, find that signal and noise, help you proactively find what it is that is an issue and surface things for you so that you're not, it's like, if your solution is just like, I'm going to throw all my raw logs into the LLM and the LLM will, it's like, that's not a good solution. Like, people have solved this problem already. There are tons of vendors on the show floor who have figured out at least some of those basics. Like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, I guess is what I'm saying. I think there's a lot of promise in kind of some of these augmentation tools that are coming via AI. So can we help people detect possible root causes faster? Can we help them kind of correlate events so things are less noisy? Can we help make it so that people are able to kind of try multiple paths in parallel? Possibly it's like, is it this or is it that? And I can kind of explore at the same time rather than having to do everything serially. All of those are really great potential use cases for applying AI into your observability, but it's also still really early. I get nervous when we start to say that AI is going to fix some of these problems, because I think that so much of it still requires human judgment, understanding of your system, and making sure that you have kind of that context. It's not the LLM context, it's that human organization context, and that the socio-technical systems have to come together so that the AI is supportive, not replacing. There's a couple of ways we can think about the way that observability data is opening up. I think one of the things that is amazing about the LLM-based technology shift that we have seen is that it really has democratized people's ability to query data. Like, for people to understand how to ask a question of their data without having to have learned something like a specific like PromQL or something like that. Instead of having to know a query language, I can go into these tools, ask a natural language question, and start to get some degree of answers. So it means that we don't have to have quite as tight of a hold on who has access to the system and who's able to derive value from the system, because it's easier and the UX is easier for people to understand things. I think the other thing that we have started to see is that there's a lot of really strong overlapping use cases for a lot of this data. So, for example, observability data and security data, a lot of that data is actually like the same raw data, and you can just use it in different ways. And so finding out how we can get more value from the data we have and present our data to the different groups that could possibly use it is a huge win in terms of that value. So we see a lot of users as we're expanding the number of people who are trying to derive value from observability data, particularly if you're asking developers to use this data. They're going to be wanting tools that they understand and tools that don't only show what's happening at the infrastructure level, but can they start to get some insight into the application level as well. And so can we start to help developers understand how their applications are running in production is a huge value for any observability tool. So when we're thinking about vendors who have started to put some of these tools together and starting to build that context, so it's not siloed data of logs, metrics, traces, but can we start to put together holistic kind of views of our data and enrich our data then with some of the AI tools? Companies like Dynatrace are doing a great job at trying to make it easier for people to actually find and derive that value. And it's not just you having to build the context yourself, but the tool is helping you do that.
KubeCon day 1, ready with all the gear for all the interviews, and very eager to see the keynote and the first announcement. So let's check it out.
My name is Juraci and Dan. I'm a software engineer at Ollygarden. I'm also a member of the governance committee for Open Telemetry, and I've been doing telemetry systems for a while now.
Hi, I'm Dan. I'm an observability architect at New Relic.
Yeah, I'm here at KubeCon in Atlanta 2025. This is a great event, and I had the opportunity to have a few talks here. So on Monday, we had the Maintainer Summit, and during the Maintainer Summit, we had an Open Telemetry meeting with Open Telemetry maintainers, where we discussed some of the things that we want to do for Open Telemetry in the future. What are the challenges that we are facing at the moment? Yesterday, for the co-located events, I had an end user panel when we discussed some challenges of adopting Open Telemetry on day 2 operations. So what are the things that happen after we adopt Open Telemetry? Later that day, so later yesterday, I had a presentation with Dan and Blanco from New Relic, where we talked about what is bad telemetry. So there's a lot of bad telemetry out there.
We went through some of the use cases or some of the common cases that we've seen of bad telemetry and how to fix it ultimately. And I think it's easy for everyone to understand that some telemetry is bad. For example, if you're leaking PII data where you shouldn't be, where you shouldn't expect it, that's clearly bad telemetry. So how do we go about identifying it? And then one of the things that we talked about was OTel Weaver as a way to live check your telemetry and seeing that that your applications emit telemetry following semantic conventions. But also another project that is like new, that's outside of OpenTelemetry, that's called Instrumentation Score, that is a collection of best practices that we can all agree on that allow us to identify bad telemetry and also how to fix it. And this is where we focus the talk at Observability Day, is different levels at which you can fix it. It's either using the OpenTelemetry APIs or using SDK config or using some of the processors in OpenTelemetry collectors.
Weaver is one of the tools within the OpenTelemetry ecosystem, and Weaver gives you tools to ensure or to enforce governance rules for your telemetry. So you specify what is a specific rule for your telemetry. So every single service has to have a specific ID or a specific telemetry point, and that is enforced by Weaver, or that can be enforced by the tools within the Weaver ecosystem. Ollygarden provides opinions also on top of those tools. Right, so we have strong opinions, and very strong opinions in some cases, about things that we don't think that should be in the telemetry in the first place. For instance, we don't believe that PII belongs to the telemetry. So whenever we see PII, we raise an alert, we raise an insight. In our terms, we call it insights. So we raise an insight and we tell people, go back to that service and clean up the PII that you're sending. That can be done, that can be enforced in the future by Weaver. So you can add that specific attribute to Weaver, say, never collect URL.query, for instance, but the detection of that problem is typically done later on, and then you can apply those rules. When you know what you are looking for, you can go back to Weaver and enforce that, or you can go back to your collector and apply the reduction processor or the transform processor to clean up the data before it leaves your premises.
Weaver and Instrumentation Score do serve different purposes. Weaver allows us to check for semantic conventions, where Instrumentation Score is a higher level initiative that allows us to look at telemetry at rest, or the data that we've got at rest, and make informed decisions about its quality, and also map it to the service, the team. Let's say that you want to drive best practices in your organization. You'll want to measure that in a way that is gamifiable. You can basically get different teams to look at the score and try to improve the score. Yeah, how should we think about using Weaver? I think probably the entry point for the majority of companies out there is probably the point of managing your semantic conventions registry. You probably have some semantic conventions internal, naming for certain attributes or certain metrics or spans, things that basically allow you to describe your systems or your domain-specific concepts in a standard way across your company. So actually, that's one of the things that we covered in our talk at Observability Day, was the fact that you need to emit that custom telemetry. Instrumentation agents or instrumentation libraries are great at providing you the out-of-the-box experience, but the reality is that in order to understand your domain-specific concepts, you're going to have to emit custom telemetry. And emitting that custom telemetry is when you start to get into these sometimes bad practices. For example, by adding very high cardinality attributes to metrics, or by not following a particular naming convention. So when people think about Weaver, the first spot is to manage your own semantic conventions registry and validate it, reference perhaps the global registry or the OpenTelemetry registry, so you don't have to, say, reinvent the wheel when you're thinking about how to describe a URL, for example. So managing your registry is the first spot. And then after that, basically you want to validate that registry. You want to ensure that during CI, that the integration test that you run in CI, for example, will emit telemetry that is conforming to your particular semantic conventions. So yeah, so Weaver is something that you can run in CI time, but also this live check that you can do with Weaver is something that you can perhaps like query telemetry from your backend and then see if that telemetry in real time is following semantic conventions. So Weaver is an OpenTelemetry project, so you can reach out and you can go to the OpenTelemetry organization in GitHub. You will find Weaver as a repository. CNCF Slack as well. There is always, everyone in OpenTelemetry.
I welcome people to contribute to Weaver, to share what is bad telemetry for them by contributing to the instrumentation score as well.
my name is Hanson Ho, and I am an engineer from Embrace. We do mobile and web user-focused observability. My session yesterday at Observability Day was called The Life of Mobile Span. I'm trying to retell the story of what a span is like, but not a span that lives in the data center like most spans, but a span that lives on mobile, which is quite different structurally and, expectation-wise and what it represents. So I tried to tell that in a fun little way rather than just have a very dry list of bullet points. So the reason for my talk, Life of Mobile Span, is actually the previous session by Jamie and Yuri, Jamie Danielson from Honeycomb and Uri Oliveira Sa from Ollygarden. They had a really fantastic presentation called Life of Span at Denver back in the summer for Open Telemetry Community Day. So that is basically mine. I would think of mine as a spiritual sequel to that session. So if what my session sounds interesting, well, you should definitely check out their session. Well, the difference between a mobile span and a span that you're used to seeing, if you're used to data centers and things like that, is a mobile span could be extremely long, and it could have a lot of information that are not directly related to breaking down the span, but kind of contextual information. So when you look at a mobile span, you might see a 2-minute span, and it's perfectly reasonable because workflows on mobile tend to be a lot longer and tend to encompass things that are not, I would say, benchmarkable. So there is a expected deviation just because of the environment in which these spans run in. We're talking about different phones, we're talking about different usage contexts. So failure and success is a lot more important than the duration of how long it ran. Because just because it's slow, just because it's long, doesn't mean it's bad. So the state of mobile instrumentation is quite nascent, basically. There are language SDKs that work for iOS and Android. But the instrumentation on top of that tend to be a lot less standardized and a lot more disconnected to each other. The semantic conventions in terms of open telemetry, for instance, are just beginning to kind of consolidate. So we're at the stage where it's possible to do instrumentation on mobile platforms. I wouldn't say it's easy. So we're trying to transition it from it being possible to being low friction. So we're working on the Kotlin SDK and API, for instance, on Android. And on iOS, they're looking to separate the language SDK and the instrumentation on top of that. On top of that. So the idea is to offer more choices for folks, less monolithic, but also be able to plug in and do things that are expected for developers on those platforms who frankly isn't used to using instrumentation for anything other than, say, bug crashes. So to secure the channel between millions of devices around the world to the endpoint that they want to send to in the collector is a bit of a challenging task because data will arrive at different times. There will be different versions that are coming in, and the networks may not behave as you would expect. Data can come in batches that are in the wrong order, and you may have data that is just missing, and you don't even know on the server side whether the data was actually sent, not sent, or simply the device just didn't work. So to balance all of that, you use various techniques to do batching so that you have atomic and logical batches, not just time-based. And you do things where you don't assume success when you put things on a network. A lot of resiliency has to come into play. And also know that you can get important telemetry hours, if not days, after the use. So having a window open of 10 minutes to have the data from the same span or trace come together is not reasonable for mobile, simply because there's no guarantee that the data will arrive since it is outside of the data center.
co-founder at Ollygarden. Our co-founder, Juraci Kröhling, had 2 talks. One was the panel to discuss about the day 2 operations using OpenTelemetry. And the second talk was about the quality of the instrumentation, because there are a lot of bad telemetry out there. So if you are interested on see how can you tackle those problems on the day 2 operations in your observability environments, just check it out, those talks. Basically, Ollygarden helps customers to improve their telemetry efficiency. So imagine you being a platform engineer or a SRE, waking up at 2 a.m. and check it out your dashboards or a bunch of dashboards that you have, and you don't have an idea what you should look at. Like you take a look at a trace, and you see a trace with only one span that doesn't say much about your information, that doesn't have information in your events and so on. Or at the end of the day, at the end of the month, you get your backend bill and see a high number, but you have no idea what this number came from, like a high cardinality metric that your development team suddenly included a user ID in this label, and you have to invest a lot of time to identify those high cardinality metric issues. If you use Ollygarden, it will tell you upfront those issues in order to you, SRE or platform engineer get an idea. I would say easier, faster about the quality of your telemetry pipeline. And the instrumentation score we released along contributions, good contributions from different backend vendors like Dynatrace, Datadog, Grafana, and so on and so forth, -0. And we use the instrumentation score in our application to help customers gamifying their their instrumentation, the instrumentation quality. Imagine the following situation. You have 2,000 developers in your structure, and those 2,000 developers handle different squads, right? So the squads are responsible for different services, and each service has a different instrumentation score, like 80, 90, and so on. And then you can gamify internally, if a squad has a better instrumentation score, so you can get an award. Otherwise, you can talk with the project managers, with the product owners to prioritize the improvements on the instrumentation score, on the instrumentation package. So basically, the instrumentation score is, an amazing project to guide you how to calculate your instrumentation quality. At the first view, you see the organization score. The organization score is a basic average, the basic average number over this instrumentation score spread on the services that you sent us. We are OpenTelemetry native, so you don't need much to send us data. You just need to set an additional exporter, sending us 1-2% of your data, avoiding also duplicating your egress cost, and we understand the OTLP. So you can send us traces, metrics, and logs. So as soon as your data arrives, we're gonna assess your data, and the assessment, the results, you can see. For example, here you can see that we are using the OpenTelemetry demo project as our demo here. So if you see the front-end proxy, the payment, and the flag G are the most observed proxy in our application. So in case of the front-end proxy, you see an insight about the semantic convention attribute level. So probably this front-end proxy is not following the proper semantic convention rules defined on the OpenTelemetry project. If we scroll a little bit down, you can see further services, like also the front end. You see the front end currently has the 82 based on the instrumentation score calculation. So on the version 202, we identified 4 different insights. So if you click on this to see what insights I detected to the front end of the OpenTelemetry demo. So I detected the semantic conventions attribute level, as I mentioned before. I detected also the excessive short duration spans. In the case, this short duration spans is when you are instrumenting your distributed tracing, you usually get, I don't know, for each part of the function, you submit a new span after or on every 5 milliseconds or 6 milliseconds. This is not a good practice. So we inform you in order to get it fixed. So often spans it's also a common issue over the companies, because if you don't propagate the context properly, so you are going to get a trace with one specific span because it's missing the parent span ID. Okay, it's one of the possible issues that is commonly over the market. And also, like the discovered resource attributes, you sent a lot of attributes in your signal. So if you click here, for example, in this case, we are identifying in a metric. So if you view the details about this insight, you identify, okay, we have a couple of discouraged attributes like the executable path, the command args, and the description. And in that case, imagine you, platform engineer, what is the value that that you ask, for example, for the command args being the node that should require? You never use this attribute in any dashboard, in any alert. So we recommend to you removing that. But stop a moment and think about how much metrics you have like that. This is only one example in one specific service. So why I have this runtime name or like this runtime description being Node.js? As you probably know that your service is already a Node.js application. So this is an example that you can get in order to send to your development team to fix this as soon as possible. So you can also share like through this link and copy and paste in your Slack or any chat message that you have internally. Just to help you figuring out how easy it is to onboard us. So click on here on the API keys, create a new one, and just set the usual collector configuration, sending us 1%, 2%, as much as you can. For sure, if you send us more data, like 100% of your traffic, let's imagine from your dev environment, we're gonna be happy, but the accuracy of this insights will be higher than if you send us 1%, of course. Currently, we have a free tier, so if you want to test us out, just subscribe on the Getting Started page and create an organization, send OTLP data, and you are going to have 100 requests per second allowed, and also 2 insights. The first one is the PII leakage, so if we identify PII in your data, you should be able to see those insights in our platform, and also this discovered resource attributes insight.
So day one is over. So I think it was quite a hectic day.
It was an intensive day.
Yeah, between ambassador breakfast,
Yeah.
talks,
What else did we
book
do?
signing,
Analyst work.
That's it for today's episode, right? To KubeCon Atlanta episode 1, where it was, how you can see, pretty much related to observability and especially open telemetry, because at the end, most of the themes and interviews were covering that. I think I'm really excited by two projects. Weaver, I think we talked about it during KubeCon London, but here we had some extra news on how to use it to validate the quality of the instrumentation that you're generating from your code. And then I think a project like the Instrumentation Score is exciting because at the end, having an indicator that we can rely on to figure out, are we good, are we bad, and then we can improve ourselves, I think makes completely sense. So Brick, two toolings that are open source that can already utilize to make sure that you have the right trace context in place and so on and so forth. And then I was very impressed by the demo delivered by Yuri about Ollygarden. So I clearly understand the insights that they're bringing in on terms of logging, if there's any bridge in terms of the data covering tokens or anything like this, or the cost of expensive metrics. So if they have too many expensive cardinality in your metrics, I think that's awesome. And last, of course, the traces with trace that doesn't fit a couple of rules. So I think now with those tooling, I think we can basically drive and touch base and approve the instrumentation, because instrumenting is easy, but instrumenting properly is a different story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. So see you soon for the second and probably the third episode on KubeCon Atlanta.